two big stories that were running today's behavior in the markets were the rebalancing in XLK, where Apple is being brought down in weighting within the XLK technology ETF, and NVIDIA is being brought way up. Now, the basic question I've been getting is, why is this happening? It's happening to make XLK a more competitive product because folks want exposure to NVIDIA. And with single-digit weighting, XLK was lagging behind NASDAQ and S&P. So this is a business decision. How can we better tempt people to buy XLK over something else? They get 9 basis points of fees. So that's where we are. They have 71 billion assets under management, and they want to make sure more of those are in NVIDIA. So they're swapping basically NVIDIA for Apple. Now, if we're swapping NVIDIA for Apple, that means that roughly $11 billion of Apple is coming out of that ETF, and about $10 billion roughly of NVIDIA is coming in. The numbers aren't as important, but the fact that one thing is being sold because there's not as much need for it to be represented in the ETF, and another thing is being bought because they have to bring it up to 20+%, we would think should do what? Weaken Apple, right? That would make sense. And look, if we're seeing some of the very tail end of the rebalancing hitting, you can see here it's just a few minutes before the close. We are never going to know when it's completed until Monday, when we know it's absolutely done. But you can see here that quick move from about 211 to 207. So look, this is not the time to be bullish Apple because we know those outflows are going to hit. We just don't know when. And that's a pretty good insight into a lot of sell orders hitting as the end of that rebalancing window is literally about 180 seconds away, right? Now, what is interesting is NVIDIA's response to all this. NVIDIA gapped down today. Now, if there's going to be a gap in NVIDIA based on increasing the exposure in the XLK, one would think it should be up. So here's the thing. Never expect that something has to do anything. No stock has to do anything. And you can see just how heavy NVIDIA is, which kind of begs the question, has NVIDIA been bought in this overall run-up since the stock split? It's not being bought right now, right? So if we see that big down candle in Apple, there's no big up candle as Friday's ending in NVIDIA. In fact, NVIDIA's had a very heavy day. So let's make sure we separate what is a story, a narrative, from price. Price proves whether that story is fiction or nonfiction, right? And this idea that NVIDIA is going to bust up to new highs and trade over 140 with this rebalancing as the wind to its back just did not end up being true. Fiction, right? And then the big question is, well, Rag, is it over in terms of movement for Apple? Can we continue to buy Apple? Let's get the rebalancing out of the way and start to look at opportunities to engage what is still, yes, an uptrend. Look, just because XLK is dropping weighting doesn't mean that Apple isn't still weighted there, although far less, but it's still heavily weighted in the NASDAQ. It's still heavily weighted in the S&P. So this notion that Apple's not the big stock, the big company anymore, and NVIDIA's taken its place doesn't mean Apple's done. It just means that it's time for us to start focusing on the trend and pull back buys within the context of a very strong and healthy Apple, right? You can see that there on the daily time frame. So I'm not in any way abandoning Apple. I'm just ready for the fact that it could sell off as the very end of rebalancing today is happening. And again, NVIDIA did not benefit from that at all. But is the SMH story done, right? Is SMH over? Is NVIDIA over? Hardly. This is the number one sector, not just month to date, not just over the course of the last 1 month, but quarter to date. And quarter to date, this is going to be far more important as we go into the end of June. We start talking about maybe end of quarter rebalancing in terms of any kind of sector rotation. Does more money flow into SMH? Things like that. It's a little too soon to get there, but that narrative is very much a possibility because SMH sits atop the leaderboard, right? So is SMH done? Not by a long shot. So as we go into next week, I'm going to be focusing on those daily price movement ranges again, and I'm going to engage the strongest sector of major weighted sectors in the indices that we have. NVIDIA is in an uptrend. Taiwan Semi is in an uptrend. It was just a very wayward week for a lot of these names, But NVIDIA is in an uptrend, Taiwan Semi, Qualcomm, MU is in an uptrend and actually really close to a potential mean reversion as it sinks down to just below 140. AMAT is in an uptrend. LRCX is in an uptrend. What do we want to avoid within the top weighted stocks in AMD? For the most part, I'm going to be hesitant with Texas Instruments. No thanks ADI, no thanks AMD, and no thanks Intel. There's too many other strong, organized uptrends that are benefiting. And if you're wondering, Rog, would it be better just to go with the SMH? I agree with you. I think that's the better way to go because that gives you exposure to the strength of NVIDIA, Taiwan Semi, ABGO, Qualcomm. Those are your top 4 weighted names in semiconductors. And that's where we're looking at follow through. So this is not the time to think, oh, well, the trade is done. Not at all. This is still a very strong sector, but we have to be aware that as we go to the end of the month, whether we start to see signs of sector rotation. In the Sector Secrets Mastery, we're going to dive into this a whole lot more, but just let me give you a glimpse of what we're looking at. Sector rotation is really the concept of 2 things: profit taking from the strongest sectors and bargain hunting in lagging sectors. So by having a hierarchy here, I've got a better idea of how that rotation should look. So if we start to see some of the weaker names that are, say, negative, mildly negative on the month or on the quarter, if they start to tick up while the leaders are ticking down, that's a lot of what sector rotation looks like. The market does not have to have rotation. We could just have money come off the sidelines and more participation. That's something that isn't talked about enough. But ultimately, we want to be at least ready for that, and we want to know what that'll look like. And this view will definitely give us a better glimpse at it. All right, as always, thank you so much for watching the video. Thanks for smashing that like button. Leave any comments or questions below, and I'll see you in the next update. Hey traders, Raghee from Simpler Trading. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to leave a like and a comment below. And remember, subscribe and click the bell icon so you'll get notified of the next update. And when you're ready to join me for live trading, be sure to head on over to simplertrading.com. I'll see you in the next update.